Pippa Gale had rehearsed her smile in the restroom mirror until it looked convincingly effortless. As the newest marketing intern at Sugarplum Candle Co., she'd been handed glossy postcards, a velvet guest list, and a single instruction: make the grand opening of the company's flagship boutique feel like the first breath of spring after a punishing winter. Inside the converted brick carriage house on Hawthorne Street, wax-filled tumblers gleamed under pendant lights, and clusters of violet and cream balloons whispered against the rafters each time the door opened. Cider fizzed in champagne flutes, shortbread crumbs clung to napkins shaped like magnolia petals, and somewhere below the lilting chatter of investors, influencers, and curious passers-by, speakers piped an instrumental version of Dream a Little Dream of Me. At 6:15, the moment everyone had been primed for arrived. Imogen Reed, the 28-year-old scent designer whose Instagram reels regularly crossed 1 million views, slipped through velvet curtains at the back of the showroom, cradling a thick lavender pillar candle. She wore her signature dove-grey jumpsuit, splattered with flecks of wax and essential oils, and had tied her hair in a hasty topknot that somehow read as intentional. A hush rolled across the boutique. Even the ribbons at the balloon knots seemed to hold their breath. Sugarplum's new line, Imogen proclaimed, lifting the candle as though it were a chalice, celebrates moments of stillness. Tonight I give you twilight solace, Bulgarian lavender, clary sage, a ribbon of vanilla bean, and a single drop of oud to ground the sweetness. Pippa, manning the far corner of the room near the display for rustic cedar votives, noted how phones rose in unison, a field of small black rectangles capturing the unveiling. She set her clipboard aside, ready to circulate samples the moment Imogen gave the cue. Imogen struck a long silver match, its hiss audible despite the soft soundtrack. The lavender pillar ignited with steady composure. She inhaled gently. Her eyelids fluttered, then slammed shut. A wobble whispered through her knees. The flame wavered. Imogen's free hand shot out, groping for the display table, but her palm grazed only air. She crumpled, the candle falling with her, violet wax splashing across the hardwood like spilled paint. The room erupted, gasps, the clatter of glassware, the shriek of Jocelyn Marrow, Sugarplum's founder, who sprinted forward in heels too tall for rushing. Pippa's marketing instincts stalled. Her emergency instincts kicked in. She shoved through the cluster of bystanders and knelt at Imogen's side. Shallow breaths rattled through the scent designer's chest. Her pulse fluttered under Pippa's trembling fingers. "Call an ambulance," Pippa shouted, though 3 people were already dialing. Within minutes, paramedics wheeled Imogen through the front doors, past a press of onlookers and drifting balloons that had lost their festive gloss. Jocelyn followed, her face a glaze of terror. The boutique doors finally closed, sealing in a silence so thick Pippa tasted it. The cedar votives suddenly smelled cloying, nauseating. Guests checked watches, offered perfunctory apologies, and trickled out. By 7 o'clock, the grand opening looked more like the aftermath of a storm: toppled props, half-empty glasses, and a dragonfly earring one influencer would later discover missing. Pippa retrieved her clipboard and scribbled the disaster's chronology while memory remained sharp. She'd seen crises spin reputations into sawdust. Sugarplum Candle Co. was barely past its soft launch. One catastrophic headline could snuff out future purchase orders. She capped her pen. Something about Imogen's collapse haunted her. Lavender, when pure, soothed rather than harmed. Yet the moment the designer inhaled, she'd buckled like paper. Pippa's mother, a homeopathic nurse, had once warned her about unregulated fragrance additives, industrial chemicals laced into cheaper oils to amplify scent throw. A few were respiratory irritants. One, methylcyclohexene, could cause sudden bronchial constriction in high concentrations. Why would Imogen, a perfectionist rumoured to discard entire wax batches over minute pH shifts, allow a compromised candle onto centre stage? By 8 o'clock, the boutique stood empty, save for staff. Pippa stacked plates in the galley kitchen, while snippets of conversation leaked from the office across the hall. She recognised the low baritone of Dylan Crane, Sugarplum's CFO. Public statement at dawn. Isolate the run. Insurance. Jocelyn's reply quavered. If Imogen dies... She won't, Dylan interrupted, but uncertainty pinned his voice. Pippa rinsed her hands, dried them on her skirt, and followed the hallway to the supply closet, where a crate of remaining Twilight Solace candles waited for next day's shipping demonstration. She pried off the lid. 10 pillars, each sealed in tissue stamped with lilac snowflakes, nestled inside. She lifted one, eyes narrowing. A faint, oily sheen coated the lavender surface, entirely absent from the testers she'd handled during orientation. She angled the candle under the overhead bulb. The sheen refracted greenish gold, similar to the iridescence she'd once noticed on gasoline puddles. Her phone vibrated, a text from Jocelyn in the staff group chat. All candles from tonight quarantined. Do not touch until further notice. Thank you. J.M. Pippa replaced the candle and snapped the crate shut, but curiosity coiled tighter. Quarantined sounded tidy, but it didn't locate the leak. And if sabotage was at play, a word she could barely let herself think, the saboteur might already be scrubbing fingerprints. She slipped out the back door into the chill of the alley, dialed her roommate, Willa, a part-time chemistry grad student. I need a favour, she whispered. Detection strips for volatile organic compounds, the kind you use in lab. Willa exhaled. Did you set the kitchen on fire again? Not this time, it's a lavender emergency. By 10 that night, Willa arrived, hair tucked beneath a beanie embroidered with tiny periodic tables. She carried a slim metal case and the kind of curiosity that made professors nervous. Inside the boutique, they ducked into the closet. Pippa drew a different Twilight Solace candle, one from the mid-crate layer, and shaved a curl of wax with her key. Willa set a strip below the fragment. Within seconds, indigo blots bloomed across the paper. That's aggressive, Willa murmured. Looks like tertiary butyl hydroquinone combined with something aldehydic. In candles, that's only used to stabilize cheap fragrance compounds, and it can definitely cause respiratory collapse if inhaled directly from a concentrated source. Pippa's stomach plunged. So this candle isn't just defective. Someone doctored it. They sealed the crate, wiped every surface they'd touched, and parted ways. At home, Pippa drafted 2 documents, a crisis response pitch for Jocelyn and an investigation timeline for herself. She fell asleep at 2 a.m., with the glow of her laptop casting restless constellations on the ceiling. Morning delivered a cruel headline anyway. Scent star hospitalized after lavender launch gone wrong. Below it, commenters toggled between prayers and cynicism. Sugarplum shares, recently listed on a niche craft goods exchange, slid 12%. When Pippa arrived at the boutique, a closed-for-inventory sign hung on the door. Inside, Jocelyn sat in the seating nook, knuckles white around a cappuccino. Her lipstick looked chewed off. "How's Imogen?" Pippa asked softly. "Stable but unconscious." Jocelyn exhaled like surrender. The doctors found severe bronchospasm and traces of something synthetic in her lungs. Pippa took the adjacent armchair. I think the Twilight Solace batch was adulterated. She relayed her findings, omitting Willa's name. Jocelyn listened in stunned silence. You're a marketing intern, not a chemist. I know, Pippa said, but sabotage is a marketing problem before it's anything else. If we don't uncover who did this, public trust evaporates. Jocelyn's eyes flicked toward the office, where Dylan spoke in hushed tones on speakerphone. We have a private investigator on retainer, she whispered. Dylan insists we keep this internal. Internal can be convenient for the guilty, Pippa replied, surprised by her own boldness. Jocelyn studied her for a long moment, worry warping into resolve. All right, Miss Gale. I'm unofficially authorizing you to look around, quietly. Anything you find comes to me first. Pippa nodded, heart sprinting. Her first stop, the production studio 2 floors above. The industrial loft smelled of beeswax and bergamot, a comforting contrast to the boutique's fraught hush. Stainless steel melters lined one wall, racks of cooling jars guarded another. Production schedules were tacked beside each station. She scanned yesterday's entries, Twilight Solace batch. TS21F, poured 3 weeks ago, cured last Tuesday, QC approval signed by Dylan Crane. Odd. Typically, Imogen herself signed off on her creations. A door banged below. Dylan's voice echoed up the stairwell. Pippa ducked behind a column. I want every crate pulled, Dylan barked to someone on the phone. Ship it to the incinerator by noon. We can't risk samples floating around. Pippa's pulse quickened. Destroying evidence before testing. That smelled like the flame, not the smoke. After Dylan's footsteps faded, she crossed to the QC clipboard. Behind the Twilight Solace sheet, a second, half-torn page clung by one staple. Batch TS21F. Addendum. Substituted L. Lavandula with reserve oil per DC request. No signature, only initials matching Dylan's. Reserve oil. Imogen's reserve oils were locked in a small fridge, accessible only by numeric keypad. If someone traded her preferred lavender for a cheaper one, Imogen would have noticed, unless she'd left early that day, trusting the QC process. Pippa photographed the documents, then crept downstairs. Human Resources kept personnel files in a locked cabinet behind Finance, but the digital copies lived on the office server. Pippa logged into her intern portal, killed the Wi-Fi to avoid audit pings, and inserted a USB loaded with a simple exploit Willa once bragged about creating. Within seconds, she accessed the restricted folder. Dylan Crane's file revealed impeccable credentials and a recent rejection email from a consortium of fragrance investors. They deemed Sugarplum's growth insufficient to cover high-risk leveraged expansion. Dylan's salary, heavily bonus-weighted, would soar only if Sugarplum merged or sold. Was collapsing the brand part of a backdoor strategy? Pippa pictured headlines, defective candle company files for acquisition. A competitor could swoop in and salvage assets at a discount. Dylan, holding shares, would profit in either scenario. She copied the file, ejected the USB, restored Wi-Fi, and pretended to reorganize brochures when Dylan rounded the corner. His smile was paper-thin. "Jocelyn's looking for you." "On my way," Pippa chirped. In the manager's nook, Jocelyn hunched over her laptop. Pippa shut the door and relayed the QC irregularities, the reserve oil notation, and Dylan's suspicious urgency to incinerate inventory. Jocelyn's face paled. "I trusted him to handle compliance. He's invested 6 figures here." "Exactly," Pippa said. "But if Sugarplum tanks, a buyout could net him far more." I can't confront him without proof admissible in court. Then we get the proof, Pippa replied. One candle from that batch is enough for a lab, but Dylan's confiscation sweep is at 11:30. Jocelyn checked the clock. 10:50. The crates are already in the loading bay. Together, they hurried through the corridor to the freight elevator. The bay smelled of diesel and wet cardboard. Stacked on a pallet were 12 crates marked TS21F. 2 warehouse assistants peeled labels with box cutters, preparing them for transport. Pippa scanned the lot. Each crate bore a tamper-proof strip broken recently. She searched for an unbroken seal, none. Then her gaze snagged on a discarded cardboard sheath, smaller than the shipping crates, wedged behind a dolly. She knelt, tugged it free, a tester kit Imogen used during scent blending, labelled TS21F master samples do not ship. Inside, foam cutouts cradled 3 smaller candles untouched. Pippa lifted the kit and straightened. Jocelyn's eyes widened with relief. They retreated into the elevator. The boutique's tiny conference room became an impromptu crime lab. Jocelyn phoned a private courier to rush the samples to an independent laboratory. Pippa packaged them with chain of custody forms Willa had emailed earlier. Results in 48 hours, the lab manager promised. The waiting stretched like taffy. Pippa wrote press release drafts that said nothing and hinted at everything. Jocelyn updated investors with carefully ambiguous memos. Dylan paced hallways, suspicion itching behind his polite eyes. On the second night, news from the hospital pricked the tension. Imogen stirred, coughing weakly but conscious. Jocelyn left in a torrent of tears and relief. Pippa stayed, her intern badge granting her an authority no one questioned now. Day 3 dawned grey. Laboratory results landed in Jocelyn's inbox at 8 a.m. She forwarded them to Pippa at 8:01. Peak concentrations of methyl cyclohexene, TBHQ, and traces of formaldehyde derivative far exceeding IFRA safety limits. The report concluded intentional adulteration. An hour later, Jocelyn gathered the core staff in the boutique lounge. Dylan leaned against a marble display pedestal, arms folded. Jocelyn's voice trembled, but with steel spine. The lab confirmed the Twilight Solace batch was sabotaged. International fragrance regulators and the police have been notified. Until the investigation concludes, we are suspending all production and initiating a voluntary recall. Murmurs rippled. Dylan's brow creased theatrically. Sabotage? By whom? Pippa stepped forward, USB drive in hand. We have discrepancies in QC paperwork bearing your initials. You ordered substitution of reserve oil without Imogen's knowledge, then attempted to destroy remaining evidence. You stood to profit from devaluing Sugarplum ahead of a forced acquisition. Motive, means, and opportunity. Colour drained from Dylan's cheeks. That's absurd. I ordered a substitution because Imogen's preferred supplier was delayed. Then why hide it? Pippa asked. Why push to incinerate the candles? And why does the replacement oil contain illegal compounds? Before Dylan could answer, uniformed officers appeared at the doorway. Jocelyn had called them once the lab confirmed criminal tampering. Dylan's gaze flicked between cuffs and exits. He chose neither, sagging as officers read his rights. When he was led away, the room exhaled, though relief tangled with grief. 2 weeks later, Sugarplum Candle Co's reopened quietly. A modest crowd lingered outside, cameras ready yet respectful. Inside, shelves gleamed with products retested and certified. Imogen, pale but resilient, sat on a stool near the workbench signing candle boxes. She now used an inhaler during long scent testing sessions, but denied plans to slow down. Pippa approached, holding a mug of chamomile tea rather than lavender. Imogen smiled, lines of gratitude etching her tired features. "You saved my life, and sugar plums." Pippa blushed. "Lavender saved your life. It told me something was wrong when it didn't smell like itself." Imogen laughed softly. "Perhaps we should rename the line after you." "Already handled," Jocelyn interjected, joining them. "Meet Phoenix Gale, launching next quarter. Proceeds will fund fragrant safety scholarships." Pippa stared between them, stunned. "I'm only an intern." "For now," Jocelyn said. "But I'd like you to accept a permanent role. Brand Integrity Coordinator. We could use someone unafraid to chase the faintest whiff of danger." Emotion lumped in Pippa's throat. She managed a nod. Around her, customers lifted candles to their noses, trusting and finding peace in the familiar hush of authentic lavender. Upstairs, wax cooled patiently, awaiting new stories that smelled only of hope.